And we're live once again on PSTV 519. And this afternoon, we have a special guest who I have not two special guests. It's Masi&Mo. So I'd like to greet Masi first. Masi, how are you? And I'm Mo.
Talofa.
And we have a guest. Actually, my companions online are honorary Filipinos. So Masi and Dr. Murray Peter Heasley. Good afternoon, guys. How are you? How are you, Doc?
Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you, Renee. And wonderful that you got a handsome someone on the in this call to balance the other side of the equation here in this call.
Oh, it's Murray Samuel, Renee.
Good to meet you, Chris.
Likewise, pleasure to meet you.
And this afternoon, some of the things that we would like to talk about is the Order of the Knights of Rizal. Okay, and as a background, Jose Rizal is the national hero of the Philippines, and in around 1911, a Filipino organized this fraternal order of Rizal, and through the years, it has expanded in not only Philippines but also all over the world. And in New Zealand, in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we have I think we have two chapters, one in Auckland and one in Wellington. I was fortunate enough around 2 years ago, around this time, I think it was November, wherein I saw wherein Dr. Murray Peter Heasley was inducted into the Knights of Rizal, Chris. And that's why I said this would be a very interesting topic to find out the reason why Doc decided to join the Knights of Rizal. So yeah, so in context, that's what we're gonna talk about. But there are things offline that we were talking that seems to be related to the Rizalian principles. The things that Dr. Hisley is keeping him busy nowadays, and I've seen him talk about being the spokesperson for people who have been abused by is it the correct term, Doc Hisley, spokesperson?
Yeah, spokesperson for a network of survivors of abuse in faith-based institutions and their supporters. I wasn't abused. I'm an advocate and supporter, but lots of people that had horrific experiences with faith-based have gravitated to me and other members of our network to talk about what happened. And so I kind of became a spokesperson because my background is useful for this with the, background in history, et cetera, et cetera. And since I'm no good with my hands, I'm completely useless. You're going to build anything. Get me to carry the brick and the wood. Don't get me to build anything. I'm good with the intellectual side of it, the historical side of it, the mental processes that involve that. I'd much rather be a carpenter, but I didn't have the skills. So, so I become a spokesperson for this. And just to put Chris in the picture, the Knights of Rizal is an organization that, as Renee has just mentioned, started as an order in 1911. What happened was Jose Rizal, who's a national hero, he was executed in 1896. He was only 35 years, 6 months old when this happened. And soon after, there was a movement to spread his beliefs. What he believed in was a secular view of the world with an emphasis on education. The belief that a nation could only advance with an educated public, male and female, non-sectarian, non-racial, and with a focus on developing the best in people and connectedness and connections. So he, in 1951, that's the year I was born, so there's a couple of strange. In 1951, the Philippine government decided to make this formal, and they through Republic Act 646, they set up this Knights of Rizal as an actual title.
Mhm.
a legislative charter. And that was the year I was born. It was also 100 years since Rizal's brother, Pasiano, died. He ended up being a brigadier general in the war against the Yanks. It was also the year, interestingly, 51, when his sole surviving sister, he had 10 sisters, 10 other family members. It's a debatable 10, 11 argument. But when she died, her name was Trinidad, known as Trining. So kind of serendipitous year, the founding of this charter, of this group, 100 years of his since the birth of his brother, and the death of his sole surviving sister, same year I was born. So um, I I've got an Irish kind of background and not interested in being in honors, especially English honors. You'll understand this,
Mhm.
having an Irish background. But the ambassador of the Philippines, a wonderful bloke called Ambassador Gary Domingo, Amba, he kept saying to me, you should join this group. And I kept thinking, nah, I'm Irish, like Irish bloody mongrel. And I kept thinking, really, this should be a Filipino thing. You don't white boys involved, white boy, Maori boys involved in this. It should be Filipino. But he insisted, no, it's non-racial. It's non-sectarian. It's universal. So eventually I agreed, and it was a great honor to be knighted. It's a full knighthood with, the sword on
Yes.
your
Mhm.
shoulder and all the rest of
Mhm.
it. And what it does is it means that it's not just an honorary position. You have to actually, in praxis, Chris, be involved in society. And you've got to be doing positive things for people. You can't just wander around with your, wearing fancy stuff and wearing your medals. You have to be involved in a practical way with society to be an effective Knight of Rizal. So I've attempted to do that through this faith-based advocacy for survivors. And no doubt you, as someone involved in community situations with issues within the Samoan community too, not just faith-based, of course, just, at the moment we're dealing with vaccination issue and pushback on that and all kinds of things. So, and I had a liver transplant 12 months ago, Chris. I had inoperable liver cancer. So I was very fortunate. I was healthy. I got this liver, and as a part Maori guy, I tried to promote the notion of people donating organs on their license, because Maori and Pacifica tend not to do that, not to
Mhm.
be organ donors, but they are organ recipients. So I've been an advocate for donor donations by going on the Auckland Council, Auckland Hospital um, magazine, and doing a video promoting Pacifica and Māori to be donors.
Yeah.
So that's another kind of Rizalian idea, Chris, I would say. Like, you're supposed to give back to society if you can. And
Yeah. What
so,
I glean from your intentions and your integrity as a movement as well is, in Samoan we say, there's a proverb, ole ala I le pule o le tautua, and that's the pathway to leadership is service. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what you're doing, is you're actually serving
Mhm.
the survivors, so that's what our common mind or our like-mindedness is like, the meaningfulness of serving others to fulfill your own needs.
Mhm.
yeah,
Chris,
Honorable.
and the minute, the moment I met Dr. Heasley in that ceremonial service, he read a poem. He read a poem, and that poem struck me. So afterwards, I was there to cover it as a news. So I approached him and said, "Can I have a copy of the poem?"
Perfect.
And then he sent it to me. And from then on, I have always been, maybe not regularly, but I've been in constant communication with Dr. Hisley, because we share a lot of things like history, public service, and I've seen how, Doc Hisley for a while also taught in the Philippines. He was he was a professor at the premier state university, the University of the Philippines, in the English department. So he has a pretty good idea of not only from the point of view of an academician, but as a practitioner in culture, in history. And so I guess he's being part of the Knights of Rizal is really something that others hopefully could also emulate. I didn't realize that. I thought it was just a special dispensation that Doc Hisley was part of the group, but now, as he explained, it's open to anyone who enlivens or leaves the principles of the Rizalian principles of especially public service. And that's why
Absolutely.
Doc Hisley, Masi, well, because he was born on Christmas Day, that's why he's Kirimasi.
Kirisi Masli, yes.
Kirisimasi.
Well,
So
a little bit
our
after. Yeah,
All,
I think.
all your Maori relatives, Murray, would have hassled me throughout my life, say, "Oh, what's your last name? Cake?" Or
Yes.
hey, New Year's.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's true.
But
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
one.
I enjoyed this fellowship, and I admire the positive. What you permeate is for the benefit of others.
yes,
So it wouldn't take much to convince them, oh, I'm here to serve you. So let's work together for a better
Yeah.
united front.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of it transcends the physical form and all its you know comfort zones. The similarities that we share. But when Murray introduced himself, immediately you felt like you were at
yeah.
home. Like you were talking to your one of the brothers or the cousins.
Yeah. So the actual motto for this group is non-omnis moria. Death is not the end of us,
It's
or
not the
that
end
it's
of
not
us. Yeah,
everything. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's from Horace, and the notion is, Rizal's view was, there's no point being a rock in a field. You should be part of an edifice. So one of the other things that has been a constant in my life, because I did volunteer service abroad as a young man, is that was a time of kind of still neo-colonial attitudes. For example, I was teaching in Tonga, and there was a New Zealand teacher there who come across, and he was a far right-wing kind of Christian guy who thought that he was superior to all of his Tongan fellows that were teaching there. He was earning more than eight of us all put together. He never got anybody through his accountancy degree. But when he finished, and there was a feast, a lovo, an umu for him, he had the audacity to say Tongan students are intellectually inferior. That's why they didn't pass.
Oh.
So I was dealing with this. You get that kind of thing. So all my life, I've tried to push back on this neo-colonial view. Samoa suffered it because New Zealand was a colonizing power there at one point, and hopeless. So
I think unfortunately that's what we share as well. A lot of our indigenous victims of colonization.
well, not just that, also sexual predation, because
That goes hand in hand with it, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's the worst aspect of it. So with the Catholics, the FMS, Marist Brothers, and SMs would come send them their worst predators, because they know that the last people talk because of shame would be the parents, especially if they're Catholic, because Catholics are a minority in Samoa and Fiji and Tonga, mainly Methodist, so, or other forms. So that's another form of colonial exploitation, apart from this idiot that I just described to you. I always worked on the principle that I will not earn more money than my Fijian or Tongan counterpart when I'm teaching. It's fundamentally unjust. No, it's not. It's just fundamental justice. Got to be careful. I don't want to give the impression that I'm some kind of angel. I'm just an ordinary man, but with very strong views on equality, and justice, and being of mixed blood, with Maori blood and Irish blood, and you name it. As we all are, as Renee is, as you are, Chris. We have an obligation to focus on what unites us, not what divides us. So here we are, all of us using, the lingua franca of English. English is spoken mainly by second language users in the world every day. So it's not owned by England. It's a universal language that enables us to interconnect and communicate. So, because if I switch to Tongan, if I switch to Korean or Te Reo, that excludes you two from this conversation. So it's a wonderful language that we can utilize for, for our common humanity. So yeah, I think that's why the Rizalian notion is so strong for me, and it's one that I'm sure we can all kind of understand and agree with. The other thing that I do is kind of try to connect with people is, Chris, you probably don't know about this exam. It's called IELTS, International English Language Testing System.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you know it?
Yeah,
So
I've worked in that field of English second or other language, but in the literacy numeracy side of things, the language side of things.
All right. So my view of IELTS is it's a racially discriminatory examination. It's a neo-colonial imposition on second language users, and monetizing the fact that you weren't born speaking English. I think it's absurd. So for example, if a nurse wants to come here from the Philippines, they have to get straight 7s in IELTS. Why do you need to have a 7 in writing? You're not writing. You're looking after people. It's insane. So with IELTS classes, I used to travel around teaching dairy farmers and people that are in practical trades how to pass this crazy exam. The technique for passing this exam, because it's extortionary and it's discriminatory, and it's a way for first language speakers to beat up on second language.
To be disadvantaged more.
Well, yeah, Chris. Yeah.
Oh, good on you. I love the fact that you're a voice for these people who, like we all know, it's almost cellular memory through the generations that are coming through 12 plus years of reliance on handouts and, kept down through lack of opportunity and real results. Like I ask my students, they're doing health and well-being, so they've got to learn about all the settings and in the sector, mental health, disabled, aged care, youth. So not just focus on the certificate level for just youth.
Yep.
What we talk about is exactly that, is being given the skills to draw out express what they're actually feeling, to make a united assessment, a real true assessment of how they're feeling and what you actually need to top them up. But like you said, and experienced firsthand from back in those times, it would have been the foreman or whatever. The whole countries and government were run on some, cow cocky that came up from the other side. Grab those idiots there and tell them to go there. So there obviously has been deaths both sides of the ethnicities, and the horror stories are still getting uncovered and exposed as we are enlightened. But the real thing is here and now, and this kind of dialogue about what we're actually doing on the ground to make a difference. Because I ask my students, let's look at the requirement of putting down statistics and indices. How are your researching skills to justify what you're reading up on, and what drives your practice? So I say to them, where do you think we're dropping the ball with these figures? From the moment it's approved and ticked off by some guy on the desk saying, yep, approved the 3 billion. And then on the ground, someone's going, oh, can you clock in for me, dear? Yeah, I'll be there at about 3 o'clock, and all that kind of stuff on the ground. So it's, these are the groups of people that have that honor and the will to sacrifice much to actually be a voice for those survivors that don't have the skills or the competencies to express, hell yeah, I'm suffering. It's been 22 years since I've had a bed of my own, all that kind of carry on, because they've been surviving the systems that are still failing them.
Yes.
And you know, I really do appreciate the work that you do, and you're very modest, and that's the way that I would imagine the Knights of Rizal are. Is that they don't want that attention and all
Attention.
the
Yeah.
you know the light say. They just want to do it, get the job done, and try and convince people that this is some serious suffering that colonialization, you know, abuse of power has done.
Yeah, and so that's the ideal. Um, so you have to be careful that you don't get strange ideas about your own, you know, uh, halo effect. You know, you got to
Yeah,
stay grounded. And
that's right.
one thing about being, you know, from an Irish background and Roxborough, you soon get your head kicked in if you start to
Mm,
get funny ideas
mm.
about yourself, because you know lots of people
It's
do a lot of
character
volunteers.
building stuff. Mm,
Yeah, yeah. And what I used to find problematic, say in the Philippines, is that Filipinos had tremendous kind of sense of um, the Spanish, and being white was an advantage. So if you've got a long nose, you've got blue eyes, even
Yeah.
if you look like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, you're beautiful.
mm,
And brown skin was ugly. So I had to work on with my students, trying to bury that idiocy,
mm.
because it's very deep. And this inferiority, this sense of inferiority
Mhm.
that and the sense of superiority from idiots who, you know, are people
Like you
with,
mentioned.
well, mental def yeah, but more insidious forms, Chris. Sometimes, you know, with people that are not as outwardly ridiculous as that bloke.
Mm.
The more insidious forms are sometimes worse, because
Yeah,
you,
subtle, eh?
the more subtle forms, they do the more harm.
Mhm.
So what I've tried to do, and the Knights of Rizal, I think, we're focused on this kind of thing, is a you know, secular approach to this. Fine, everyone can have their own spiritual beliefs. That's
Mm,
fine,
mm.
but they're separate from society's responsibility to deal honestly and openly with the injustices and inequities of in which we find ourselves. So, you know, if you're born into the world as a non-English speaking, Tagalog speaking, or Bisaya speaking person, that's a disability when you're trying to travel international. The Philippine passport's another problem.
Mhm.
So, how do you get over these structural issues that bedevil one's life, and how do you make somebody feel better about themselves? So my approach to life is basically, you know, an egalitarian approach to stuff. And since I've got these gorgeous degrees, I have a credibility that lets me in the door, you
Yeah,
know, and
yeah, yeah.
but without losing, you know, homegrown Central Otago Roxborough ideas about, you know, giving everybody a fair go. So it's important to see the commonalities between, you know, a Samoan Chris Garlow and the Filipino Rene Molina and
Mm.
Murray Heasley. We're both basically three men wanting, you know, a better world. That's basically it, isn't it?
Yes.
And so the Knights of Rizal approach is supposed to be that. And
Mm. Mm.
so another area, of course, was a lot. We had a lot. Chris, you'll understand this with PTEs. Some of them these are private training establishments. A lot of those organisations are pretty dodgy, and to put it mildly,
At
and I was
best.
and I was party to closing one of the worst of them, which was International Academy of New Zealand, run by Filipinos. Who, and often what happens is people are most abused by their own countrymen,
Mm,
because they use the language, and they use this I'm a spiritual person and
mm,
religious
mhm.
structures to entice people in, and then they rip them off.
That's
So
right.
this PTE was an example of that. So another part of my advocacy has been protecting the rights of, in this case, Filipino students who've come here, to give them a chance to have a decent life and not be exploited by uh, malevolent fellow countrymen.
Mhm.
It's not just a Pakeha thing. And often people are abused by people who have skills in their mother tongue. That's true in Samoan, that's true in Maori life, etc., etc. Some of the worst offenders are te reo speakers or Samoan speakers, or because they're not doing the right thing by their people.
Right, so, catching up with my younger sister, who's an educated young lady, 50 plus, and she'll have a moan about one of the community services since looking after mum. This is the similar kind of service that drives us. So she's left whatever, a great salary teaching at the local school for plus 20 years to look after mum, caregiver for mum. And she did that for dad 11 years ago when he passed. Anyway, what was my point? So getting services from our own becomes like, oh God, I hope I don't get a Samoan, because I might get one who's over familiar and then starts telling me off and doing her, I'll tell you what, if I had all these opportunities, or have turned on the dime when she's sat down and go, oh, talk to me, sister, I'm here to help. Then looks at her degree and treats her like, well, how come you've got a degree and you're not like secured any jobs yet or anything? How come you went to Alaska to visit your sister for a year? And, so, yeah, I know that happens as well. So, again, a voice, somebody with honorable intentions to help, someone else with the skills of language to be damned to learn some phrases out of respect, because that puts you on the same level. And those are all the things that I admire about groups such as this. And I dare say that's my philosophy of teaching is like, if you can't have the integrity and humility to perhaps learn off your student, then you're probably in the wrong business, You've got to be able to give and take and discuss why you sort of concur. But yeah, interesting to hear the horror stories that we've worked with and the same horror stories that seem to be put in a category now to how you're going to help them. So
right. So one of the survivors that spoke at the Pacifica hearing of the Royal Commission, under a pseudonym, when she complained against the sexually abusing priest, she got ostracized by the Tongan community. You shouldn't have said this. And she got, I don't know what it's like in Samoa, but in Tongan society, the most powerful person is the father's sister. It's called Mehiki Tanga. She can curse you. So the father's sister, in this case, cursed the auntie for complaining about a sexually abusive priest. And she has been ostracized from her society. So sometimes the culture can do the worst things. It is the reinforcing things. Similarly with as you mentioned about students, I had the good fortune to teach at the University of the Philippines. These are really clever students, the cream of the cream. And I was delighted to have these classes, and nearly everybody in that class was smarter than me, Chris. So I saw myself as a facilitator of creative thinking. And that's why I had such joy teaching at that place, because I didn't come as, a person providing wisdom. I came as a person who understood my job is to inspire and facilitate these young people's creative brilliance. And that makes teaching fun. If you go in there as in the old ways of seeing yourself as the man with all the answers, you're no teacher. You're just an egotistical fool. And
barking your ideas. No, I love it. You say facilitate creative development or something, and I always bark on about my one that's facilitate self-discovery. I always say that to Renee. It's like, we're just guiding their learning. We're sort of pointing in the right direction, and they develop that natural sort of I totally dig that philosophy, that methodology.
And as an older person, so I'm 70 now, and my advice to young people is, listen to me, but don't do what I do. Like, I made all the mistakes. People, when they discuss their lives, sanitize what happened in their lives. I'm sure, Chris, you've had your ups and downs.
Of course.
I'm not going to bloody say anything.
No, mate, you'll say yourself down the river. But you know, like as older men, we've all been there, done that. We've done, you know, we've made lots of bloody mistakes in our lives, you know. And but so when you're offering guidance, be careful that you don't present yourself as the exemplar of everything good. Because,
that's right. That's right.
Not. And so, you know, you've got to have if you're not, I've said to Renee in a previous interview he did with me about doctorates, I said a doctor is someone that learns more and more about less and less until finally what their expertise is a water drop that then plonks into the Pacific Ocean and you're back to square one because you're constantly learning. So I said to him, anytime you come across a guy with a doctorate who's got arrogance, you know you're dealing with a moron.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
because a doctor should teach you humility, mate. And
I love your approach. I look forward. I mean, I congratulate you now on your choice to study and do it. It's like all these years, everyone what they can't say what they think about something. They have to reference their agreements to their readings. But when you're wearing that floppy hat when you graduate, that means you can just say, well, I think this and I think that, and I'm qualified to say that.
And also I think later today we're gonna hear from the Prime Minister that you know what's the level for Auckland, because Doc and Chris, you all live on the North Shore. Chris lives also on the North Shore. So I'm just looking forward to the day when the three of us can just sit down and have a cup of coffee there in Apuna, and then you know,
we'll start a reference called "Strengthening Our Bubbles."
Strengthening our bubbles.
Yep. It's really good.
Yeah.
And so and since I'm a liver transplantee and I'm double vaccinated, 63 studies have shown that transplantees sometimes have between 0 and 40% cover because you're taking immune suppressant medication to stay alive. So I'll probably be masked for the rest of my life, I suspect. So that's all right. Finally, I can walk out. I'm going to get one of those Darth Vader covers. I'm going to walk up to anyone called Luke and I'm going to say, Luke, I am your father.
Hopefully, when the lockdown's finished, we'll be behind you. Renee and us will be behind you going, dun, 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 dun. Dressed up as
I'm not your father. Leave me alone.
He said he was my auntie.
Well, don't laugh. I have a lot of my Tongan relatives who have had sex changes, and your uncle becomes your auntie the next time you meet.
Wow.
That would be a good topic next time, Doc. That's a good, because that's culturally that's something that Pacific and the Philippine culture are a little bit, you know. I have
a platform to gas bag about alfalfa fingers.
I have interviewed someone in the Philippines. He was male. So when he came here, he became a female. And then I had another interview in the Philippines. She was a she. When she came here, she became a he. So
wow,
it's and I respect them because they have their beliefs and everything. But the way society, so that would be something that we could, like, you know, have maybe invite them. And you know, as I mentioned earlier, Chris, Masi, it's always a pleasure to listen to Doc Heasley. Like, he facilitates discussion. He's a mentor, and when he was teaching at the University of the Philippines, I was doing my postgrad, but I was in another part of the campus. So I heard of this, not really crazy, but they were saying, "Oh, there's this Kiwi professor in the English department."
He's really out there, this Mr. Heasley.
I think you were driving a motorbike then. You just big Harley, you know.
No, BMW, the motorbike that you saw cops, you know, the BMWs.
The BMW.
And
he was just one of the other professor who was doing that was Dr. Randy David. He was really a
That's right.
radical guy also, like
Yeah.
doing sociology. So
Yep.
I never got the opportunity to meet Doc Heasley back at the Diliman campus, but I've heard of his in his department. And so when I got to meet him 2 years ago or 3 years ago in that November, and it's like I hang on to him now because there's a lot of things that I learn
Of
and he can
course.
share with us and with our listeners and viewers. So
Yep.
hopefully we will have more of Dr. Heasley now that you're semi-retired. Hey, Doc.
I don't know. It's
Can't
my,
keep a good man down.
no. My life's getting busier actually
I
Oh,
can imagine.
because of this survivor advocacy
yeah.
and the Royal Commission not really working at all. My workload is increased. It's an ocean of pain, but you can't head for the hills. You've got to keep swimming through it. So,
Okay.
yeah. So it's a strange retirement. I've never been busier.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, I'd like to thank you, Doc Heasley, for this time that you've given us about Knights of Rizal, and looking forward to, I guess, activities that the Knights are doing. Is just because of the lockdown and everything. But when there was no lockdown, there had a lot of things going on, and and thank you also, Masi. You are having a healthy lifestyle with that backdrop of yours.
Oh, it makes me go. I feel like going and have a whole side of mutton now. Throw it on top.
Just one thing I'd like to do at the end. You probably know, Chris, the song Pokari Kariana, yeah?
Yes.
All right. So Jose Rizal was a multilingual person, and he was very fluent in 6 languages, but he was conversant in 22. So when I wrote this song for the Knights of Rizal, and it's the tune Pokari Kariana, but each line has got a different language to honor him. So English, Tagalog, Spanish, and in the Tireo. So if you let me, I'll sing this to finish off. I won't
Yes.
translate, but
I'd be honored. I'd be
Yes.
honored.
All right.
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
Okay. So you can sing along with the tune because you know the tune.
Sure.
Okay, ready? This is a time for leaders, mga kapatid ngayon. Todos juntos, mis hermanos, manaktianay, Knights of Rizal, kabutihan, corazon puro, kiyo kote pai. Just one verse, one chorus. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank
Beautiful.
you very
Kay
much.
te mihi nui ki ako e ho.
You're welcome.
Po Mari.
Oh, Maria.
Oh, thank you, man.
Thank you very much. And,
Renee.
God bless. Thank you very much for listening to
Nice.
Dr. Heasley, Masi, and Mo.
See you in
Bye.
2 weeks.
See you guys. Bye.